This will be a little bit of an unusual conversation with Casey, as in we don't have one specific topic that we want to probe the depths of Doug's devious mind on. We thought we would put it out to our readers and ask you what you wanted to hear about and send in some questions for Doug. And I expected that we'd get a pretty good response from people, and a lot of different minds out there and interested in different things and what do they want to hear about. But I have to say, the response that we got, it just blew me away. It was 100 pages of 1 or 2 sentence questions. It was, I didn't even count them. There were hundreds and hundreds of questions. So obviously we are stirring up thoughts. People are listening, people are reading, people are thinking about what we're saying, and I'm absolutely delighted. You don't have to agree with Doug or me on anything for this to be a valuable conversation with Casey. The idea is to stir up thoughts. So we're actually delighted. We have a bunch of things that we want to go over from readers. We have people here today, and since you're here, you came all this way, we think we ought to ask you if you have any questions too. So we'll get right into that. But first and foremost, tune into your guru wavelength for a moment, Doug. Beep, 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 beep. And we've talked about one of the big things that's on people's minds. You've talked about some pretty cataclysmic events coming down the pike. Rick told us about 2 epic storms coming together. You've talked about exiting the eye of the storm. These are big, heavy words. And we've seen the trouble in the Middle East, and it's looking like the black swans aren't just out there. It's looking like they're starting to land around us. It's kind of scary. Tell us a little bit about what your guru sense sees going forward. Trouble spreading to Saudi Arabia, or what happens next, and not necessarily a prediction, but paint us a picture of where things could go.
Yeah, I hope you'll excuse my having an occasional sip of a cup of coffee. I read the Dilbert cartoon every day. I'm a little bit self-conscious about having some coffee, like Wally always does, if you read that cartoon. Anyway, I thought it was very interesting that with what's going on in the Middle East, that was a black swan. Nobody expected that somebody lighting himself on fire in Tunisia, just some poor guy trying to sell fruits and vegetables, and he did the same thing that those Buddhist monks were doing in Vietnam during the 60s, lighting himself on fire as a protest. That's pretty radical. And it spread, and it spread, and it spread. So the big thing now is what's going to happen in Saudi Arabia. Well, as most of you probably know, I've been to 175 countries, but Saudi is not one of them. So I don't have.
Would they let you in? Because you drink, you smoke, you're a bad boy.
Yes, but I also went to college. One of my classmates was a guy named Turki Faisal, who was the head of the Saudi CIA, of all things. But Turki and I never got along very well, and he invited a bunch of my classmates for an all-expense-paid tour to Saudi at the expense of the Saudi Farayin, I guess. But I wasn't among the invited ones, so I missed my chance to have the Saudi CIA fet me in that country, and I'm very sorry about it. But I think it will spread to Saudi Arabia. Because unfortunately, all we really know is what we read in the paper. And that's bad news, but even worse news is that 90% of everything you read in the paper is bullshit. It's basically entertainment purposes only. Still, there are some grains of truth that you can parse out of it. And it seems to me that what's going on in Bahrain, which is in the oil-producing area, or next to the oil-producing area of Saudi, it appears that it's serious and it's going to spread to Saudi. Why wouldn't it? There are reports that they're doing a lot of things. So, and Obama appears to be checkmating himself because, once again, this is a report, so you don't know, that he's using the Saudis as a cat's paw to ship arms to the rebels in Libya, which he's belatedly kind of supporting. But that means that if the thing blows up in Saudi Arabia, he's kind of got to support the Saudi government at this point, which, of course, I think he would anyway. So anyway, this is a really big thing, very, very big, serious. And I don't think people are giving it adequate, I don't know what you do about it, quite frankly, except you stay long oil and stay long gold.
So, just sort of taking a step forward, do you see it, if the region is revolutionized, it's not likely to be more pro-Western as a result. This is not good for Israel, and the potential for conflict there.
Yeah, it's huge, because the average guy on the Arab street knows that all of these horrible people that run all these Arab and, for that matter, Islamic countries, almost all of them are puppets, in fact, or certainly in perception of the U.S. So they've learned to, hate the U.S. and not see the U.S. as something to strive for, but see the U.S. as being their oppressor. So it's going to be a tough situation. It really is. And you understand, why the powers that be don't want to see these people overthrown, because you don't know who's going to come next. But they're almost certainly going to be anti-U.S., just to pander to the average guy who knows that he's been suppressed by the U.S. all these years. So I think it's serious. This is not a flash in the pan. That's my guess. That's the way I read it. Not a flash in the pan.
And how does that fit together with sort of the economic scenario? We have a global economic crisis unfolding at the same time to have a geopolitical crisis unfolding. Perhaps not a coincidence. But
No, it's not. And of course, the oil producers are major holders of U.S. dollars, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they want to treat U.S. dollars the way Saddam wanted to treat U.S. dollars. Get rid of them, don't price oil in them, and of course that could help bring things down. Also, I don't see a real danger of the Islamic fundamentalists taking over in these countries. It is a danger. But one thing that I do find kind of interesting is that in the Quran, and I'm not a fan of the Quran, of course, but one of the, I thought, rather shrewd things that Muhammad said in there, actually I should say Allah, because Allah wrote the book, not Muhammad, they say, but be that as it may, they designated only two kinds of money, the dirham and the dinar, gold and silver of a certain size. I think 4 grains of rice, as I recall. So who knows? They might go, these people are gold-oriented, and they're also silver-oriented. That's what the dirham is, silver. And they might want to do what Mohammed Mohatir did or wanted to do in Malaysia, go to a gold currency. Of course, his idea was just for settlement between governments because they don't trust each other, and they don't. So
I wonder why.
And at the same time, they don't want to use U.S. currency. So he thought, let's use what the Quran says us to use. So a lot of things could happen from this.
Okay. Well, actually, let's segue from that into gold, and then we'll go to more questions. The Oracle of Omaha, in his infinite wisdom, kind of dissed gold in his most recent comments. He talked about how if you took all the known gold in the world and you put it all in one lump, it would be a cube, 67 feet on a side. It would be worth $7 trillion. And he talked about, well, what could you do with $7 trillion? And would I like to own this cube, 67 foot on a side of gold? Or would I like to own 7 Exxon Mobils and half the agricultural land in the world and all these things you could buy for $7 trillion?
With the $1 trillion of walking around money left over.
With $1 trillion. So that versus this cube, it would be pretty, and I could look at it, my reflection in it or whatever. He was joking about it. It seems to me he sort of missed the point of what gold is, and do you want to let's talk about gold a little bit. Why is he wrong? What did he miss?
Well, first of all, I've got to just say a few words about Buffett. I mean, clearly, the best investor in history. He's just a genius and a well-disciplined
After
one.
Imelda Marcos. After Imelda Marcos. Rick Roll's friendly correction,
after
right?
Imelda Marcos, right. That's right. Who who turned a $15,000 a year salary into a $3 billion stockpile
Lingerie
of money.
collection.
I mean, she was very clever. But I really believe that as avuncular and as charming and as clever as Buffett is, I really think he's an idiot savant. Extraordinary. He's a genius at investing, but I don't see that he can, anything else that he says is of value. And it's actually rather shameful, this latest thing. Charlie Munger, what he said is even worse. I mean, it's pure sophistry on his part. Of course, if it was just a lump of metal sitting there, if you took all the steel in the world and put it into a really gigantic lump of metal that would probably be, I don't know, a couple square miles in size, not just 67 feet in size, what good is that? I mean, steel is just sitting there. It's crazy because that's not the purpose of gold. The purpose of gold is to be used as money, okay? It's not to sit there in a cube. That's its function. Like the purpose of the agricultural land he's talking about is to grow food. Purpose of the industrial corporations is to produce oil. Purpose of the gold is to be used as a medium of exchange and a store of value. And to say that it's sitting there as a 67-foot cube is sophistic and ridiculous, and he either hasn't thought this out or he has thought it out, and he's got nefarious intentions of saying it. So, very disappointing. He's an idiot savant, like most of these billionaires, quite frankly. I mean, I've got very little respect for him. Yeah, sure, he's got a lot of money. He's got some technical competence. Okay, next. I mean, Charlie Sheen's got technical competence when it comes to being a comedic actor. He's actually very good. I'm a little bit sympathetic to Charlie at this point, too. I like the way he talks about truth torpedoes and so forth.
Okay, well, let's continue on the gold vein for a little moment here and talk about gold versus silver. I'm not sure exactly why this should even be a question, but there are a lot of questions of gold versus silver, almost like they were opposing contestants in a boxing match or something. Mm-hmm. But there we go. If people want to know, which do you like better, why, how would you position yourself in one versus the other? A lot of questions on gold versus silver. Yeah. To me, they're both precious metals, but...
Yeah. I don't know. Do I like iron, or do I like aluminum, or do I like magnesium better? I'll have to refer to my periodic table. Look, they're different. They're different elements, and they have different characteristics. Most of you probably know this, but maybe you haven't thought of it for a while. Gold, okay, the most non-corrosive of all of the 92 natural elements. That's one of the reasons why it makes such a good money. It's also the most malleable of all elements and the most ductile of all elements. These are superlatives. This is why it's a high-tech metal. But the same is true of silver. Silver comes in second place, I think, in those second or third, in those gold categories. But it's the most reflective of all elements of light, and it is the most conductive of both heat and electricity of all metals. So it's also a high-tech metal with lots of uses. But the fact of the matter is that there's, especially since 30 years ago, the U.S. government had an inventory of over 1 billion ounces of silver, which it liquidated in the 70s. And now there really are no big inventories of silver anywhere. It's not like gold, which in Warren Buffett's kind of warped mind is sitting there in a 67-square-foot cube. All the silver in the world is, there aren't any big inventories of it. And even if there were, if all the silver was out there, it would be worth much, much less than the gold is. So that's why silver is much more volatile. There's not a big inventory of it. It fluctuates more with supply and demand, but most important, it's primarily an industrial metal. So